All right, Vault Dwellers, welcome back to the Fallout Hub for a very, very, very extra, very special episode. And if you are watching the video version of this, you can see already that we have some very special guests who I'm about to introduce. But let's start off by introducing myself. I am your host, Tom, or Robots. And with me, as always, I have Dave. Dave, how's it going?
It is going very well. I'm very pleased to be here on this joyous day.
This joyous day. And we have Ken also. Ken, welcome.
I am here with the Afghan, as you can see.
Yeah, Ken always has the Afghan
chair.
Grandma in our hearts.
And if you're new to the Fallout Hub, this is the show that we talk about all the awesome stuff about Fallout 76, tips and gameplay, and we also interview some really, really cool people. And this week we have some exceptionally cool people. We have Mark and Ferret from Bethesda. Welcome, guys. How's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, we're excited to be here. This is I don't get to do a lot of these, so I'm stoked.
Awesome. Ferret, welcome too.
Nice to be here. It's wonderful to see you guys. I especially appreciate your background.
Oh yeah.
Well, thank you. So for our listeners who aren't necessarily familiar with you guys by name, can you go into a little bit, just a quick little elevator speech about what you do in the company and a little bit about your history with Bethesda and Fallout?
Yeah, Ferret, you go first.
Okay. My name is Ferret Baudoin. I'm the lead designer on Fallout 76. I have probably one of the craziest sort of relationships with Fallout because I actually worked at Fallout 3, which was called Van Buren over Black Isle way back in the day, which was, so I have the distinction of when I was interviewing at Bethesda, it's like, I've worked on Fallout 3. Just not yours.
Right.
So that was fun. But no, I was a designer on Fallout 4. I did the Railroad. I did Deacon. I did Curie. I did all sorts of fun quests there, and I was the lead quest designer at launch for all the content for Fallout 76, and then post launch I was the lead designer.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Awesome. And Mark?
Hi, I'm Mark Tucker. I'm the design director for Fallout 76. Pre-launch, I was the assistant lead designer. So post-launch, I've moved into the director role. Let's see, my path to getting to BGS was kind of unimaginable, to say the least. I was originally working for a different ZeniMax studio called Battlecry Studios, located in Austin, and we were working on our own thing, and then at a certain point, that thing went away, and we started working with the Bethesda Game Studios in Maryland. And long story short, we combined forces. Our studio became Bethesda Game Studios Austin, and here we are today. It's been again, if somebody had told me 7 years ago when I started working at that studio that I'd be working for Bethesda Games Studios, I would have said, no way, that's not possible. Because I really, never planned on leaving Austin. So I didn't ever think that could happen. So in some uncanny set of circumstances, Bethesda Game Studios came to Austin and came to me. So it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
That's very cool. Well, let me just speak for the three of us and say that we are a little bit excited to talk to you guys. I mean, we're absolutely stoked. The three of us have been playing Fallout 76 a ton, and the other games in the series. We each have hosted our own podcasts about these things, and this is a fandom that we are very, very excited to be part of, and to be able to talk to you guys directly and get a little bit of the behind the scenes on these games is it's kind of a little bit of a dream come true, to be honest. Which so thank you so much for joining us. The beginning of our show, we always have what's called the Robots Dozen. This is when we ask you guys quick fire 12 questions, and we're going to start with Mark, I think, and we're going to go back and forth.
I think I drew the short straw.
Yeah, so we're going to start with Mark, and we're going to go back and forth between the two of you, and just whatever's the first thing that comes to mind when we ask you the question, just go with that. Right? There's no wrong answer, unless, I guess there is a wrong answer, but just go with it. So here we go. Question number 1. Where did Cotton Eye Joe come from?
Oh my God. Maryland.
Maryland.
Okay.
I think
That's a legit answer.
I
Legit
think
answer.
that is the right answer. I think he probably did come from Maryland. All right. Number 2. What is your signature dance move? Ferret.
Oh my God, it's the embarrassing dad dance that even my kids don't want me to do anymore. So it's like,
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
There was
I didn't
no
expect to
hesitation
get-
with that answer.
I didn't expect to get the visual representation of that. That is awesome. Very
Yes.
nice.
This is
Thank
what we're
you.
here for. Yeah, I like that.
This is what we're here for. I'm going to have to ask these questions of our other hosts later in the show. Number 3, back to Mark. You have to be a super mutant or a Deathclaw for 24 hours. Which do you choose?
Ooh, that's interesting. I'm going super mutant for sure. Yeah.
And why?
I can still talk. I mean, yes, I guess technically there is precedent for one talking Deathclaw, I believe, back in the day.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, being able to talk with, short syllable words. Yeah. I think communication is still important. And I can crush people with my, ridiculous muscles.
That's true. There's super mutant crush, puny human.
Crush puny human.
Meat bags for everybody.
Ferret, would you rather have half a shaved head or missing one eyebrow? Or be missing one eyebrow?
oh, half a shaved head. I've done that before at times. So that's easy.
We'll have to have some pictures. We'll put them up on social media.
Actually, I think it was a full shaved head. At one point, I just got tired of hair, which distressed everyone. But it was just like, enough.
Yeah. All right, back to Mark. Pineapple on pizza?
Oh, hell yeah. No hesitation there. Yes.
All right.
I'll join you, Mark.
With an extra Canadian bacon on the side or on the pizza. Yeah. That's actually one of my favorites.
I can already see the chat lighting up with people on the pineapple pizza debate.
Oh, yes.
That's
Yes, immediately.
heavy contention.
You just gained a ton of fans and lost a ton of fans.
I'm
All
okay with that. I'm comfortable in my pineapple on my pizza. Yeah, no, it's you're not taking pineapple away from me on my pizza. Yeah.
All right, Ferret. Question number 8. What is the best animal sound?
What does the fox sound like? For whatever reason, that's what you're
The fox sound.
Ring a ding a ding ding ding.
All right, back to Mark. Would you rather give a 20-minute speech to 100 people naked, while naked, or listen to 100 people give 20-minute speeches fully clothed?
I'm going 100 people giving speeches fully clothed. Yeah.
2,000 hours of speech giving.
Yeah, that's
I sit through a lot
I
of
have a
meetings
degree by the
already.
end of that.
I sit through a lot of meetings, so I think I've got a pretty good tolerance.
I think you've already answered this one in real life, actually.
I think I've already hit that quota. Yeah.
All right, Ferret. Question number 10. Why not cross the beams?
Go for it. Just do it. I say with the heck with it.
All right. Like the end of Ghostbusters 1. Yeah, let's just do it anyway. All right. Question number 11, Mark. This is your last one.
All right.
You get a second dog in Fallout who's not dog meat.
Mm-hmm.
What do you name it?
Cat meat.
But it's still a dog.
Yes. I'm trying to do that with a straight face. Yeah. I feel like there's some kind of theme there, and with little time to think about it, I'm trying to stay theme and variation. So I figured cat meat.
That's awesome.
Could be monkey meat, giraffe meat. It just so happens that the first one was a dog meat, but there's no reason why we can't go with other animal meats for names, right? I mean,
It's true.
Or I guess you could go, if you wanted to keep dog as the anchor point, you could go dog veggie, dog whatever, dog pineapple, dog pineapple.
Oh no, not again!
Put dog bacon on your pineapple pizza.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
I bet dog bacon doesn't taste very good.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
All right. Final question for Ferret. It's a very similar question. You now get a third dog in Fallout. What do you name it?
Oh man, I even have time to do it. The thing is that actually naming, you would not believe how civilized we can be, and then when it comes to naming, how the arguments can sometimes flow. Like, we're very particular about names sometimes. So I'm just going to say something, hurricane. Just a word. Don't know why. It would take me sometimes days and weeks to properly name things, just in the back of my head. So, but hurricane. Yeah.
So hurricane. So the two of you are building your Fallout settlement, and now you have dog meat, cat meat, and hurricane as your three dog companions. Very cool. Well, thank you for answering the Robots Dozen. This has secretly been your GOAT test also, and we now have some results for you. So let me pull that up. Okay. All right.
It's
so
a
Mark, you will be, your career now will be gymnast. Congratulations.
Oh, that's right. You know what? That was always going to be my fallback if game development gets worked out. So I'm thrilled.
Congratulations, gymnast.
Thank you.
High stats for, agility and all that kind of stuff. All right. Then we have, Ferret. It looks like, it says here, didgeridoo expert.
No.
Oh, a didgeridoo. Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
You're a musician
in Australia, so I have a little bit of practice on that already.
Perfect.
So,
Well, good. Yeah, so you can charm us with your. I don't know if they make other notes, but you're just gonna be an expert
I'm
at
happy
that.
to dance and do acrobatics while he plays. So I think we can make a pretty good tournament. Yeah, we're definitely go on tour for sure.
Yeah, I think this might be inspiring. We might be inspiring you on some new characters to add into 76 at some point. So, guys, we have a number of questions for you about Fallout 76 and kind of where things are going. We're very excited about the new stuff that's coming out later this year and some of the things that have kind of been teased and kind of trickling out into the newsfeed. So we've got some questions. I know Ken's got the first one to kick this off. Ken?
Yeah, when we'd had Pete Hines on, he'd commented that making games is hard, and he's right. I think a lot of us who grew up pointing and clicking within Myst, or even making up your own character's backstory in Fallout 3, love that classic RPG style, but trends and tastes evolve. At the end of the day, you're artists and fellow gamers, but a company needs to stay on trend. So how hard is it to juggle the core experience of Fallout with the evolving tastes of the industry? I mean, that has to be an incredibly hard needle to thread.
Yes, it is, no doubt. And, when you look at the Fallout 76 as a project, as a game, right, you can see where, okay, we took what has been a historically single player franchise and moved it into a multiplayer space. So that right there is a massively challenging undertaking, right? Like just on the technology side alone, it's a huge lift. But on top of that, it's also a challenge for just the property, the franchise, right? Like, how do we meet fan expectation? We're moving into a space that a lot of our fans may not be in, right? So, threading that needle, I'll be the first to admit, like, this project, all of our players have witnessed the ups and downs of trying to thread that needle, right? And I think we've got a lot of things right. We've definitely made a few mistakes along the way, but we are definitely, as players of our game and developers of our game, we're pretty cognizant of, after we get it out there and we get the feedback, where we've gone wrong, how to course correct. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the industry is moving towards kind of this games as a service model. We're threading that needle, and the challenge of not only building the tech and getting the game out, we're also having to run a live service and continue to put updates out. It's, by far one of the most challenging projects I've ever been involved with. And it is a, not only threading the needle, it's just a balancing act every week, 2 weeks, okay, we're trying to get this thing done, but we've also got a problem in the game we have to deal with. It's never ending, and it can be a little stressful at times.
Balancing sprints and response to the community, I'm sure, is difficult.
A lot. But yeah, I mean, the franchise. I know I'll let Ferret answer more on that in that area, because that's definitely an area he has a lot more experience in. But that's tricky too, right? So
I think it's always a challenge to stay there. But I think one of the tricks is that a lot of us are like incredible diehard fans of the genre. So I play pretty much every RPG, most MMOs, extensively. That's I get the awesome thing of being able to tell my wife when she's like, "Are you still playing?" It's like, well, it's research.
This is market research. Leave me alone.
I am always doing research, and I'm always laughing, and it's always a good time. But no, it's work.
Yep.
But it is one of those things. You play people's other games. You see what's working. You see what's don't. And even then, for Fallout 76, there was no clear analog. There still isn't of the game that we made, and that were the game that we're continuing to evolve into. And I think it was always just okay, we obviously know Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 extremely well. And so just trying to figure out what are the next steps, like what are the next things that we can do to excite people? What are the next experiences that we can deliver on? The whole project was tremendously exciting because it's never been done really, like having multiplayer in this setting. And I think that we didn't predict how cool the community would be. But in some respects, maybe we should have, just because it's like a lot of us have been around the franchise forever. And it's just a good group of people for the most part, that just love this genre. And so for us, it's always the thing that isn't hard is adding another Fallout location. Or it's work, right? But it's not like it was risky. It's not like we weren't like we're going to go to Appalachia, try to bring that to life and such. Like the sort of the lore stuff was actually probably the easiest thing that we were doing. Like all the tech stuff, that's where it was an incredible effort by the engineers to even get us to minute one of people playing in a game that felt like Fallout.
Yeah, and I think like from a marketing and business standpoint, live service games as a trend has really disrupted the whole video game industry. So I think all companies are still trying to evolve with that trend and stay current in a big way.
Yeah, I mean there's pros and cons, right? This type of project, a lot of companies can't do this, right? It's a massive investment out of the gate, right? So we're fortunate to be, working for a company that is willing to make that bet, right? I think this game in particular, like I'm excited to have been a part of it and to continue being a part of it because all the pieces are coming together really well for this thing to have an amazing long run, right? We've got a fantastic universe to work in. We have a company that is willing to make this hard bet and stick with it. And we have an incredibly talented development team, right? So you bring all these pieces together and we have a fan base that, as Ferret was pointing out, we have an amazing community, right? We have fans that love the game, and it's a remarkably I love it. Like I love our fans. They're nice. They're nice to each other most of the time. Like it's a great community, right? And how they embrace how you guys embrace each other is fantastic. So it's just the stars have aligned, and we have something really special here. And it's so I'm excited because I do think we have an opportunity that other companies and projects don't. And I think this thing I think we can have a really long run with it and continue to add to it, make it better, fix problems, add new. I mean, it's cool. It's kind of going back to when I was introducing myself, I couldn't have imagined having the opportunity to be a part of such an interesting project, a unique project, and something that I think, when history looks back on it, we will, people will reflect on this game as sort of it'll be a defining game, I think, because we're not an MMO, right? We are not an MMO, and we're definitely not a single player game either. We're threading a needle there, as you were putting it earlier. So
Yeah.
It's almost like a cooperative. You're a cooperative RPG without being an MMO.
yeah, and then every now and then there's other people around.
Yeah. And there's room for some conflict and some PvP and some other things, but for the most part, it's like playing a cooperative RPG. Yeah. And that's definitely something that I appreciate about it, especially because my wife is also a big fan of the series, and actually probably has more swag than I do. But being able to play a game like this with my wife instead of passing the controller back and forth is a magical experience, you know?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Ken, did you have another question?
I did. Yeah. Wastelanders, from reviews alone, has really been an unparalleled success. It's not only brought back a lot of people who stayed away from the game in year one, but also introduced a lot of the traditional elements that made it feel more like Fallout, or the one that they were familiar with. Was it always the plan to introduce NPCs eventually, or was the decision to bring in NPCs a response to the desires of the community?
It was talked about almost immediately as soon as we started coming up with this sort of design for what this game would be, that there were developers that didn't agree, that said that, right out the gate, that we should make it to where that there's talking NPCs and the more traditional fixtures of a Bethesda RPG. They would have added an enormous amount of technical challenge on something that was already, like the Russian judge was giving us, like, oh, that's a 12 out of 10 for technical difficulty already. Right. So, I mean, there were straight up logistical reasons why you do want to ship this, right? So, okay, all right, but it was something that was, it was on our radar from a very early point. But the thing about doing something that was just so, there's no clear analog, like I was saying, that, people would argue about like what the community would want, but we didn't know, not for sure, right? Like, people would make very good arguments both ways of, oh, we should do this or we shouldn't do this. So ultimately we worked with the box that, like, no, like if you see someone that looks like a human being, that's a human being. And there's some really cool advantages to that too. I mean, you hear a gunshot off in the distance and you're like, who is that killing something right over there? That's pretty neat. But like, once it launched, it was clear that there were a lot of people that was some really critical elements that were missing. And so it became kind of just like, well, then yes, let's do what we all, there were plans for, okay, or if we do this, this is the sort of thing we want to do. So actually, like, as soon as we pulled the trigger on that, a lot of the pre-production was already baked in because it's something that was in the back of a lot of people's minds for a very long time.
Still, though, to suddenly bring in NPCs and bring in voice talent and all of that in the time frame that you guys did was a massive undertaking.
Oh yes,
I think Pete Hines had said that you guys went over budget on voice talent with the amount of people that you brought in to write all of this awesome stuff.
Well, I'm a lead designer, but I also write a lot, and it's very hard to tell me to stop writing. And I know I'm not alone. So yeah,
I can sympathize.
We caught a little bit of flack for that, but it was also like there are good reasons for it. I mean, because before as soon as you add generic people, there's a multiplication factor that happens because like every line you write is multiplied by every actor. So in Fallout 4, that was kind of already baked in when we were doing the DLCs and stuff like that. It's like, oh no, all that's free. But as soon as we said, okay, no, as soon as you add a generic raider, you multiply every line that they do by, N, and it gets the line count gets high very fast.
Right,
yeah, we might have missed that budget by just a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, it was worth it. I mean,
I absolutely agree. The characters that you've written, the backstories, even beforehand, during year one, you come across these notes and holotapes, and even without NPCs, there were some really amazing stories of people that you just missed, like the Enola Walker story. Whoever wrote that, you talk about some evocative stuff of slowly being turned into a scorch. That was a beautiful written little bit of following those holotapes around. You get those finally in the form of NPCs, and it just is really compelling to engage with those people.
I actually think the one thing that, like, if you didn't know that Appalachia was dead and you're playing Fallout 76, I think there's a lot more dramatic tension. And it's ultimately always going to be very depressing, right? Because it's like, oh, maybe I can save this guy. Oh, he died. This person, I'm going to say, they're dead. You know, but having that hope might help. But it's certainly, as soon as you add people in, it's just like, I think we get that suspense back. Because it's like, okay, we're telling this guy's story. Is he going to make it? Is he not? Is this decision you're making right now going to eventually ripple into something terrible down the line? It's like, no, all those are fair game again, which is fun.
Yeah. I think so. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Ken.
When you have during year one, that just feeling like you just missed a living person accompanies you through the whole game. I remember even doing the Mistress of Mystery. When you finally find her and her daughter, you feel like you just missed them, like they were just alive and now they're not. It's so tragic.
Spoilers. So a lot of this stuff, when you talk about characters and the experience you have pulling from Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 and making those and building character stories and things like that, obviously you're drawing from a wealth of experience from the other games. How much are you pulling influences from other older Fallout games in the series for some of the upcoming stuff? Are you looking back? You said earlier when we were talking that you're going back and playing Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. Is that influencing some of the stuff coming forward or stuff from Fallout 3? Are we going to see nods to storylines or characters? Or, like, how is that influencing things?
It's, we definitely are influenced by the earlier titles. We don't necessarily want to retread old ground, but at the same time, we also can't take some aspect of Fallout and turn it on its head necessarily. So there's a balancing act there. I'm trying to think of a good way to talk about this without giving away too much of what we're doing. But, we have to, it's the nature of kind of so there's some interesting challenges with our game, right? Aside from the fact that it's a multiplayer game and all that, we're a prequel, right? So we have to be very careful about what we do in our game because it timeline-wise happened before all the other games, right? So there's a lot of conversation every time we start talking about something new, a new storyline, whatever. There's always comes up in the conversation. Well, how is that going to fit in the overall world? In some ways, like how did it not make its way to DC? How did it not make its way to the West Coast? Like, we have to think about these things. We don't always explain it, right? But we definitely think about it. So there's a lot of that conversation that happens with regards to the other titles. And then also where the timelines do kind of overlap, thinking about some of the stuff we're doing right now, we are looking at the previous games to make sure that we're not accidentally retconning something, that we're keeping the continuity of the story, the characters where it makes sense. So yeah, I'd say it's kind of more that, like, just continuity. The fact that we're a prequel introduces all kinds of challenges, So that's.
I think also for me, a lot of it, it's not that I'm explicitly saying, hey, I want here to have a nod to Fallout 3, or here I want to have a nod to Fallout 4. For me, it's a holistic thing. The lore is the world, right? And so when you go into a certain area, I just want it to organically feel like it belongs. And for, like, I did a lot of the writing for the Brotherhood of Steel at the launch for Fallout 76. And for me, I'm a big, huge Brotherhood of Steel fan. And to me, it was an awesome chance to sort of say, like, let's explore some things that haven't been explored before that make sense. Because Maxon has always been just a very intriguing figure to me. And so just by talking about that, actually, there are nods to all sorts of things from various games. Fallout 1, probably more than anything.
Yeah.
And But to me, it wasn't like I was trying to say, hey, I want to make an allusion to these things. It's more like, no, this is part of the world, and the world went this way. And it's kind of cool because it was able to add a twist to it, where it's like, no, Maxon's actually, he was a very interesting figure and a very important figure, but his vision of what the Brotherhood of Steel should be wasn't quite adhered to, which I think makes perfect sense, especially after a huge disaster. I think history rewrites itself all the time. And so that was a really fun space to work in. And I think the other thing that I like doing as well is that once we have the story, then we just knock some of the story off. Like there's been holotapes which have been written that I'm just like, yeah, and delete. Because it's much better if there are some holes, right? Because it's just like, there's some, we know some of those answers. And in fact, we've written some of those answers, but it allows you to play the guessing game, which is especially like at launch. I think lore archaeology, if you're a person that's a lore person, is just that's the jam, right? Like, so we were wanting to make it so that it was as intriguing as possible.
Yeah, awesome. I love the idea of there being like holes, and I do the Fallout lore cast, so obviously I'm a lore person. But that when I put together an episode and I go explore like something, and I go like, here's a piece here and here's a piece here, but then there's this gap, and I'm like, well, this is what would make sense for me in that gap, but what do you guys think? Because we don't know. You guys are the only ones who would know.
When listening to your podcast, Robots, there have been times I've just been.
Oh, no.
Well, good. Well, you could write in sometime as like a anonymous person, be like, well, what if it's this? And then like set the internet on fire.
Perhaps I have in the past and then was told that's impossible. And I'm like,
my code name is Muskrat. Yeah, Muskrat.
Awesome.
So
stuff.
part of my background is I studied geography in college, and then took a minor in Appalachian Studies, and ended up moving back to West Virginia. So I live 2 blocks from the capital. So I spent like 4 years watching and reading and going through a bunch of media, even
salivating.
From like even the 1800s on, just about Appalachia, the region, the culture, the complex dynamic issues. So I kind of have some questions centered around that. One of the things that I think most impressed about is, of course, the landscape in the world. So how did you all capture and condense landmark cities and other locations in such surprising detail for this geographic region that really isn't widely known around the world?
Well, I know our lead artist, actually, he took a vacation, but while he was on vacation, was taking a lot of photographs. And apparently the people that were with him I kept like, why do you take all these pictures? And like, I don't know, just really interested. And so he took a ton of photos. So we got a lot of photo reference there. Mm-hmm. That's one thing I'm aware of that helped. Ferret can probably elaborate quite a bit more because he was more involved in those earlier stages than I was. But I do know like that has been kind of, in the past, other projects have done that.
Nathan Perkypile was our location scout. Yeah. Like he did an epic tour of West Virginia, and some of the goofiest things in there, like the Landview Lighthouse. The first time I saw that on the list, I'm like, dude, no, we can't do that. I mean, Fallout's goofy enough. And then he'd show a picture. There. It's there. And I'm like, fair enough.
It's goofy because it's actually goofy.
Yeah. Right. There's a house with lots of pumpkins and a giant teapot. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just like, okay, now it's just real life. And so it was awesome that Perky was able to explore with that eye to what would really pop as a Fallout place. And the other neat thing about working with reality is it's very easy to just, with a Google search, okay, this is what it looks like. And it's not as easy to then figure out how you're going to fit it on the art schedule to get all those pieces in there. But I think a lot of times you folk, they could answer better than me. But certainly we focus on the things that are the sort of eye-popping things, the sort of really memorable parts, like, oh, this whole facade here, that's distinct. You see that, you think Harper's Ferry. It's like, okay, we need to get this right. Like the back alley, whatever, you can probably get away with it being, 3 feet this way. Local people would be like, hey,
Right.
I live right there. It's like, well, I'm sorry. Like, we can't afford to recreate reality. So we pick our battles. And then a lot of times, actually, there's a lot of push and pull about just the scale of things, right? Because ultimately, it is very easy to make things too big. And the bigger things are, sometimes the more cumbersome it is as a player, it's harder for us to create. It's harder for us to fill. Like if you make a big space, the expectation is there's a lot of content there. So I think a lot of the real trickiness comes with us figuring out, okay, like we got the look roughly right, and now we have to make it fit the right scale. But fortunately, our level designers and environmental artists are just really, really good. Some of the best in the industry. So that's just what they do, and they've done it for so long that they're really fast at it too.
It's interesting. Well, on the first day we played it, I played with a friend that lives in the neighborhood, and we live right in between. There's like the downtown of Charleston with the Hornwright building, and then there's the Capitol building, and we technically live in between there. And we go there. We're like, oh, I wonder if our neighborhood would be there, and it's just flattened. And then we were going, I don't know what I expected. That's pretty much everything in Fallout. Just it's flattened. But it's interesting talking about those landmarks, and there's even like little details. Like there's a bridge that I run on. That's the bridge in Charleston, and it's like across from that, there's a building that's exactly recreated, and that's like where I like to take my wife for an anniversary dinner. Like even especially some of the interiors in the bigger locations, like going through the Greenbrier, and I mean that's like. Shot for shot. I mean, for all intents and purposes. It's crazy because like for people that live here, and I know that there's a lot of people that feel similarly, there's like a kind of a weird like memory tick. So when you're there, you're like, this is familiar, and you like have these like seeing it like recreated in a digital environment. It's almost like a VR kind of experience. I don't know, like you're doing some Google Maps and you've like placed yourself down the middle. I think that's a really interesting thing. So kind of going from that. Going through a lot of the media for, I guess, the representation that Appalachia has is kind of, backwards hillbilly rednecks. This game, I think, it's wild, and I don't think that people fully understood what was going on. And I was clued in enough that I kind of got it, but it is so deep in its representation of kind of what the culture of Appalachia is, and like to expect that from a video game instead of like this like an NPR style documentary or this like really artsy movie about the like to see that from a video game is amazing. So what was kind of the key and is continuing to be the key of making Appalachia feel more realistic rather than this caricature that most people think that it is?
I think that when we were doing development, I want to say before even minute one, we just all knew that we were going to, we always treat our areas with respect, right? Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do is trying to bring it into the Fallout universe, right? But also it's a wonderful opportunity because with fiction, you can sort of be a mirror to show society to itself. Like if you put it in a different context, people can let aside their preconceptions and they can maybe look at something fresh. At least as someone that writes, that's something I care about a lot, is that it's an opportunity for people to self-reflect and maybe grow a little, or at least just have some fun listening to some stories. I mean, no judgment, but it is when given this opportunity, it's like, no, absolutely, fully cognizant that Appalachia, West Virginia has received not necessarily the greatest media. And but we would pass along like links and stuff like that for documentaries and stuff like that. Anthony Bourdain did one in Appalachia, which I thought was incredibly powerful. And so we were looking at this and just really thinking about like, okay, these are the real problems of Appalachia. but we're not talking about contemporary Appalachia. So like, let's say like this was the Appalachia, but it changed and it grew. But we wanted to keep sort of those gestalt sort of issues there that no, you know, mining is still a big deal. It makes sense. Like that wouldn't go away. If anything, with the resource wars and stuff like that, with the fallout, you would think that it would get even like old veins would like, if there's even a glimmer of resources, they're going to open it again. Right. And who's going to, if they're opening again, what's that mean? Miners. Right. But then we throw in like the whole thing, which is more of a contemporary thing, which is like, okay, it sucks sometimes with the mining conditions. It's terrible historically. And, you know, so, but you throw in automation, it's like, you know, what's even possibly worse is also just not having that job at all. And that's something which I think is going to be on the forefront of people's mind going forward. So it felt like, if anything, we were like looking ahead to, in the future, this could be a very serious issue, if not for some people already is. And so we just had that as kind of like as our headspace as we're designing things. And it was remarkable because I don't think I ever had to tell someone this is too trite, this is too disrespectful. I think everybody was just fully on board with like, no, we're going to try to make these humans as 3D as possible. In fact, there were like one of the people that had the kind of patois of the area is actually one of the most brilliant people, which I thought was awesome. Like, it's just like, okay, cool. You know, like, yes, you have that sort of twang, but you're also this like home taught scientist lady that's doing all this research that just sort of handles, oh yeah, apocalypse happened. Gonna get to my job. Gonna try to figure it out. And it was like, you go. Awesome. So right. I think we were all very excited to try to do a very misrepresented area justice.
So what gave you the idea to adapt cryptids to the Fallout universe?
You got it, right? They're awesome. Some of the stories are so fantastic. I mean, well, like I'm going to let Mark talk about one of them that's specific, because when you first taught, I read a lot. I had not. I'll let Mark go.
Yeah. So we added a cryptid after launch, the sheep squatch, right? And when we first started talking about the sheep squatch, you know, we presented the idea, and everybody just was like, I mean, you hear the name and it's just like, that sounds kind of goofy. What is that? Like, and we had to explain, like, we didn't make this up. Like
the first time Mark told me about that, I was like, no, we're not gonna, like, come on, like, Fallout's goofy enough, really? And then he sent me the link, and I'm like, play on, sir.
Yeah, I mean, so, you know, this, I mean, you know, it sounded goofy, but as we started talking about it and looking at all the, you know, the sightings and everything, and some of the, you know, the supposed photographs and art that people from the region had created, it's like, oh no, this is really cool, and it is unique. It's unique to that area. It's their Bigfoot, right? Like, so it was kind of like, you know, after some you know, discussions and realizations, like, okay, no, this is actually part of the lore. You know, we decided, okay, let's move forward with it, but let's also kind of make it our own. Like, it's kind of got a little bit of a goofy name, but like, it's not going to be goofy. Like, when you see this thing, it should be terrifying. So yeah, that was a fun one. I mean, you know, like, definitely adding anything called a sheep squatch to any game, I think will have to go down as like a check. That's definitely a checkbox for me on my career. Like, I don't think
I can imagine you all sitting on YouTube at work looking up old mountain monsters, those, you know, those like crazy trapper dudes. My favorite particular one is the one about the sheep squatch peeing on one of the illustrious catchers. I
saw that episode. It was the most ridiculous show I've ever seen.
Some of the research we have to do is anybody that's tracking some of the websites we have to go to for research for this has to wonder who we are.
I am certain I am flagged 9 ways from Thursday. Just be like, I did the last voyage of the USS Constitution. And so I was doing all sorts of research about rockets. My search would be like, rockets, how do I tamper and make them explode? Like that would be my search, right? And then I'd be like, oh no, that wouldn't quite do it. We need to make the rocket explode in a different way so that you can tamper with it. So I kept doing search after search, and I'm like, if I'm not on a watch list, I am now.
Yeah, it turns out there's quite a few cryptids that we haven't, like, that we could still put into the game. Like just the research, like there's a long list of.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of.
Dave's like, I have a list.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a well that has not run dry.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see, and they're always so cool. I think kind of transitioning, one of the most interesting things I think as like a game and a product that you all have made is there's this continuing narrative that locations are changing, things are happening, and you may miss it. Like some of the locations from launch are different now, and they're being occupied by people and raiders. And from the previews, it seems like that there's some stuff related to the Brotherhood of Steel coming out. I'm curious though, how much does the community influence those stories that you're building in the game?
You know, I mean, that it's I'd say in terms of community influence, I think the bigger area where the community has influence is more on our features and improvements. You know, we have a lot of ideas on story. Yeah, there might be some influence here and there, but I think that's where the bigger community influence comes from. You know, and it's not me trying to downplay what the impact the community has. Like the community has a tremendous positive impact for us as developers. But I just think, like, you know, where we're kind of paying more attention to what the community is saying is more on like, okay, the features we just put out, or the features we're about to put out. I'll use a recent example to kind of make my point. So we've over this past year, we've started running a public test server, right? Which gives us as developers a tremendous opportunity to put something that's still a work in progress out and get early feedback on it. So that way, when it does get into the final game, it's going to meet player expectation, right? And so recently we did that with our legendary perk system. We got it out there, and you know what? Like, we got some serious critical feedback on it. Like, there were some issues, right? Some of the perks weren't really, allowing some of the build flexibility that players wanted. Some of the restrictions on how often you could change them was not well received. So we listened, and we're addressing that feedback. We've made a lot of changes. We've put it back on PTS. We're getting much improved feedback, and so that's to me like where the community can have the most influence is giving us feedback, especially when we're in the earlier stages of development, to help us kind of shape and hone in these features before they go out the door, right? And the nature of it being a live game is we're always going to continue working on these things and shaping them based on community feedback. It doesn't end when it actually, in many ways, starts when it goes live. But you know, this gives us more iteration with more feedback. Because like before that, the only feedback we could really operate on was internal feedback. And we have great developers, really smart people. We get lots of feedback internally, but it's still, you know, a small number of people in the grand scheme of things, right? So we're not going to be able to hit all those viewpoints and really get the just sheer amount of feedback that we get by putting something out on the PTS. So that, you know, that's where I think the community has a tremendous amount of impact. I love it. I think it makes for a better game. And it, you know, it keeps us developers on, you know, we have to make sure we're doing our job and delivering stuff. But we get that feedback. So that's where I see the influence happening more.
I will say that there is one way the community affects things, which is like when you do a bunch of content, you don't necessarily know what's going to resonate with the audience, right? Like, you know, it's just like there are times where, like, you know, especially when you're doing companions or stuff like that, it's anyone's guess how it's truly going to be like resonate and what people are going to enjoy. So certainly being able to see like, oh, people really like this. Well, cool. Like, we can sort of focus a little bit more on that, or like, wow, this thing that we thought everybody was just going to pay bananas for, I haven't seen anybody mention it. Okay, well, maybe we'll backburner that, but then like once we know sort of, it can help direct what sort of areas we hit. Like it's like, oh, cool, look at everybody just loving this area. It's like, well, we need to do something with that. That's some of them are pretty obvious. We knew White Spring was going to be pretty well received. Like, if not, it's like, oh, come on. It's amazing. so there are a lot of guesses we got right, but certainly the community, helps inform like, oh, wow. Okay. Clearly a lot of people want to see more of this. Okay. Good to know.
So kind of building off of seeing the community put in those, I guess, influence into the mechanics of the game. How do you all evolve camps in 2020 and then beyond?
That is a good question. So, we've already announced our shelters feature, right? That is on our roadmap. That's something that we're planning to release later this year. That is a massive expansion on our camp system, right? So you will be able to have it's an instanced interior that you can build out, and something that we're working on right now, and the preliminary results are super positive. We're lightening up a lot of the building restrictions. So we're calling it like a pro mode or whatever, but that's going to be kind of the default building. And inside the camps, things still snap together, but a lot of the rules for how and what you have to place, like foundations, like it's more like what you would. It's a lot more like what you experienced like in Fallout 4. It was a lot lighter. Like you can just place wherever you want to. And I'm telling you, like already, like some of the stuff we're seeing just internally built, like from some of our team members, is fantastic. So I'm really excited about that feature. I think it's going to open up a lot more creativity and opportunity for players. And on top of that, we're always looking at ways to expand or improve the budgets. I'm right there with players. Like every time I get something new, I'm like, I got to delete something from my camp because I get, so it's frustrating, right? So we're looking at ways to expand on that. We have a lot of building in our game is something a lot of our players do. So we're very keen on continuing development and expanding that feature set in the future, right? I can't give away too many more details, but we're definitely focused on the camp as a feature, kind of a foundational feature moving forward. We're going to look for other opportunities to expand there, but the initial thing I think to look forward to is definitely the shelters.
Awesome. Yeah, that has me really hyped.
Yeah, that's going to be, everyone's going to go insane over that.
Yeah. It is super cool, and it's it's kind of one of those things like. Just even with camp, like you never really know. It's hard to predict what players are going to build, right? Like I'm just right now thinking through all the cool stuff I've seen from our players. Like I've seen launching Brahmin, I've seen murder churches. I've seen just last week there was an amazing shot someone put on Reddit of a pirate ship up on top of a mountain, and it was like, holy crap, that's awesome. Like so, it's just once you go into a shelter and you've removed some of the building restrictions, I cannot wait to see what players build because it's stuff we haven't even thought of. I'm confident.
That's going to be so awesome.
Some of the stuff they did with the camp. There was actually this one time where I was playing. I was playing and I was like, okay, there's this building. It's like, and then I saw terminal. I'm like, wait a second. I have not reviewed that terminal. Like, what is on that terminal? Because sometimes people are tricksy and they try to sneak things by me. So I'm like, okay. I go in there. There was a player terminal. I'm like, my God, that building fooled me. The environment so well that I'm like, okay, who put this here? Oh, a player did. Well, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I love that feeling of coming up on an area, because the map's so big. You come up on a part of the map you haven't been to since the last patch or whatever, and you see a building on the horizon, and you go, huh. They added a new building over here, and then you get close enough and you start looking at it and you go, oh wait, no, somebody else built this. Isn't an official building. This is a camp. Huh. Okay, cool. Yeah, but at first you kind of aren't sure. That's great. That's really cool. So one of the things that the community does a lot is they seem to identify themselves with specific factions. In fact, when people jump into our Discord, as soon as we find out, oh, they're here because of Fallout, that's the first thing people ask. Like, what's your favorite faction? Who do you identify with? Are we going to see any sort of official organizational structure around this, like guilds? Are you going to be able to define yourself as being part of the Brotherhood beyond, say, like just the outfit you're wearing or the flag that you have as your little profile image? Is there going to be more to it than just that?
So we've definitely had a lot of conversations on that topic over the course of development. It's definitely something we talk a lot about. I'm not ready to say confirm or deny that we're going to do anything like that in the near future, but it is a popular subject on the dev team. There's a lot of complexities and challenges with doing something like that in a game like ours. But I guess I'll leave it at this. It's not off the table, but I can't confirm or deny that.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair. And it's just kind of cool to know, because this is one of those things that people talk about and kind of, gets floated around. So obviously fans are going to want to know that, like, yes, you guys are listening. This is something that is in consideration, and who knows, maybe we'll find out more about that in the future. So very cool. Ken?
Even before the vault opened and at the launch of the game, it was pretty clear that PvP was meant to be part of the core aspect. But I think since then, we started doing things like building donut shops and gas stations. And for the most part, people tended to be pretty wholesome in their interactions with each other and being generally helpful. Higher levels, going to the vault and dropping stuff off. So PvP is kind of... the community as a majority of it has really shifted away from that to the point that I know PvE content has really been prioritized this year. Is there a plan for PvP, or is there an opportunity for there to be like fight arenas, or even the new arena that's introduced with Wastelanders, turn that into maybe an instant cell where PvP matches could be held? Something that would at least give PvP players something to do.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting dilemma, right? Like you kind of pointed this out. Like our community, like the overwhelming majority of our community, turns out everybody's super nice and wholesome. Like who would have thought that people in the wasteland would be nice to each other? So it as a from a developer sort of business side, it's challenging, right? Because we have a majority of our fans doing things in the game, and we need to make sure that we're keeping them happy. But we also don't want to, yes, we know that there's a portion of our fans that like to play PvP, and we want to try to keep them happy as best we can. But it's a balancing act.
Right.
So right now, the majority of our focus is still on PvE. I do think we have some things that are going to be longer term in next year that we're doing that will provide a lot of interesting opportunities for PvPers. But it's I can't really elaborate too much more on that. But I think there's really cool potential for PvPers to have some more unique experiences in the game, but that's going to be much longer term. I just want to set expectations. It's still a long ways out, but we are actively working on that thing I'm talking about. So this is not cool. There's active development going on. It's just a massive undertaking that we're doing, and I think that has a lot of potential for PvPers and actually a wide variety of players that want to do different things in our game. I think it'll open up tremendous opportunity there.
I will say, like, with the whole PvP situation, I mean, one of the great things we were highly concerned with before launch was toxicity, because there are so many communities where their number one thing that they're trying to deal with is trying to keep the players from strangling each other in real life. Right. So
yeah, it gets.
Yeah, it's terrifying. So, like, in fact, there was a note I wrote in the Overseer's terminal in Vault 76, which was my sort of hidden plea: please, players, don't go and murder yourselves all. Try to be nice. This is your Overseer, please. And like, I don't think that's what actually made the community nice, but hey, maybe it helped. But knowing that we have such a genial community, we have to be very careful that, like, I wouldn't want to epic that for the world, right? Like, it is that the specialness of the community is something which is kind of sacrosanct. It's like, no, whatever we do, we just need to make sure that we're not making it so that the majority of our people that just want to play with each other and just be friends with each other are now suffering problems and inconveniences and making it so that they're getting griefed or something like that. Right. That would just be terrifying. So, like, anything we do, we just have to be very careful, because we need to make sure that there's safe places to do that, and then everybody is happy, right? As opposed to, and now suddenly, if you pick up this rare flower, everybody can shoot you in the head. It's just like, well, I used to like this game. So that's what we wrestle with.
In general Bethesda games, there's a lot of messing with systems and changing the knobs and seeing if I do this, then what will that do? So in this particular game, there's been kind of these two builds that have come out as high level, particularly. So where do you all stand on the bloodied versus junkies build debate? Or is there another build that's your favorite?
I'm going to go pineapple.
There goes the chat again.
Bloody. Yeah. My primary character is a bloodied character. So, like, that, and it is very powerful, but you're a paper tiger, right? Like, any little nudge and you're dead, especially with some of the tweaks we've made. So I kind of like I used to play a mage in Warcraft, World of Warcraft, and it had that same sort of feel where it's just like all the colossal powers of the universe, one hit on the chin, I'm dead, So I kind of dig that style, because, man, when I'm going, I feel great, but whereas the junkies build good build too, but I like living dangerously.
That is my honest answer. Is also I'd lean towards bloodied as well. Just that sort of glass cannon gameplay. The junkies has there's a lot to maintaining the junkies. For me, it's like, I just don't have the time outside of work to really sit down and invest in a junkies build, like maintenance and upkeep. So the bloodied for me is kind of more it's just the red line. Like, you're like a race car in the red. You're always right there. Right. Glass cannon is pretty exciting, but I will say I tend to more or less I kind of more default to the chameleon sneaky rifle build, because that's kind of how I've always played a lot of these games. So I just kind of sit back, and they never never saw what hit them, and that works for me. So
yeah, that's what I go to. That's mine.
Yeah.
Can you talk about anything surprising you've seen requested by the community? Like, what's one of the most surprising things that you get feedback on that you didn't expect?
I think this is less of a surprising request, but more just sort of a reaction to something we put out last year. So player vending was something that internally we knew was going to be pretty cool. It was hopefully going to help facilitate more trade between players. And we thought it would be kind of popular, but like, once it went out and, we're seeing all the data, because obviously we collect a lot of data and we can look at what players are doing. It was way more popular than I think a lot of us would have predicted. And it ended up sort of creating this whole sort of play loop for players. Like, that became, like, for a lot of players, like, that became their jam. Right. And I think I think we all would have said like, yeah, we know players are going to like this. Like we like it as players, but like, it definitely hit a threshold that I think very few of us would have predicted there. So that was cool. And so for me, that was kind of like a good surprise. That's definitely a good surprise. I'm trying to think if there are any bad surprises. There have been, but I've probably blocked them all out of my brain. Ferret, I don't know if you had one.
Well, I would say that like I fully expected PvP to be huge, like a huge component of the game, and it really changed what I was planning to do because. In fact, there was some stuff there was a quest in particular that I was 1,000,000% behind, but it was PvP focused, and I think was going to be really cool. But then once I saw like this is the audience I have, I'm like, this idea doesn't work. It's a bad fit for this, and so just the real letting that sink in. It's like, okay, we have some people, and I think it makes a certain amount of sense. A lot of the people that came from us came from single player, right? And what did they really want to do? They wanted to be with their wife, their dad, their son, daughter. That's what they wanted. And so I don't think that the thing that they were most anticipating is, cool, I get to find strangers and gank them. That was the top of their list, right? It was more like, hey, I want to play with my friends. I want to play with my college roommate I don't see. That's what they wanted. And so that being your baseline, I think in retrospect, I think we could have predicted that maybe PvP isn't going to be as popular as we think. But still, that was very surprising. And it was also just amazingly surprising just how beyond not being PvP, just how generous people are. Like there have been times where I'm basically turning people down. Like, no, don't give me any more. Trust me, I'm good. Like I have everything I need. But people are really nice.
Yeah. Well, to close this up, I have to ask a question that, of course, gets tossed around in the community. But question: Fallout 1, 2, 3, New Vegas remake? Re-release, new consoles coming out. Are we going to see any of that happen?
You're interviewing the wrong people to get an answer. You need to be talking to Todd Howard to get an answer. If any of that is in the works, I sure don't know. So yeah, I'm just excited about the Amazon series. Oh my God.
That is going to be amazing.
Yeah,
as soon as I saw that, I was like,
yeah.
Well, guys, thank you.
Know more about that than we do. So,
yeah, we've already discussed it on one of the most recent episodes, and we've nerded out about it. In fact, that's the patron episode of the Fall Lorecast. Tomorrow night we're going to record it, and we're all going to talk about our hopes and dreams for that series and what we're hoping for. So, yeah, hopes and dreams.
Ron Perlman,
and fears, and please make this awesome. But guys, thank you for joining us. This has been awesome getting to see your perspectives and get a little bit more inside glimpse to, what you guys go through and the kind, your feedback from the community, the way you watch and plan and have adjusted over time. It's really cool to see it a little bit more from the inside from us fans. So thank you for your time.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Thank you. It's been kind of delightful because I listened to some of your podcasts, and so for me, it's just like, oh, cool! I get to talk to these guys.
Yeah. Open invitation. Whenever you guys would like to join us on any of our shows, you're always welcome.
Oh yeah,
cool.
Ferret, you want to do a voice on the show?
I do voices. Perhaps not well, but I do voices.
I will
That's
say
fine.
He does do voices well. I will vouch.
One thing you don't know, because none of these ever survive, is actually like we do. If you write, eventually you do placeholder VO for yourself, and just because. In order for people to understand a quest before an actor reads it, it's very important to understand the inflection and all that stuff. And also, just as a writer, you're reading your stuff, you actually catch a lot of, ooh, that doesn't work. And so I've voiced all of my characters, and I try to act
Can you is there one you can do for us real quick? Is there a specific character? Can you do like a Morty Mort or
Well, here we go.
The one I can do,
Ferret Unplugged.
I shouldn't do. Durat. The one thing, of course, I can't do is the one thing that's springing to my mind.
I mean, you could do a Codsworth. You could do a Rose. You could do
give me a line like
the Overseer.
I did a lot of lines for Stripe Grant or Maxon.
Maxon.
Maxon was a lot of fun to just try to get into that space. It actually helped me develop his character a little bit. Like the talks, like it's funny because I'm talking to myself. It's the Taggarty Maxon exchanges that you get they help the writing of that tremendously, because having Taggarty say like, you don't understand, Maxon. Like what you're talking about might work over here, but these people, like, we give them a gun, they're going to shoot people. We can't allow that. And he's like, listen, we're here for these people. You understand that, right? Like, it's not, this shouldn't be about us. We're doing all of this for them. One day we're going to have to give it back to them. So we have to do that. So
that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, that's
very
cool.
good.